All right, let's dive into the world of high-stakes poker. But here's the thing. We're not going to talk about just flashy plays or lucky hands. We are going to pull back the curtain on the system, the actual blueprint that takes a regular player and turns them into a pro. And it all really starts with one big question.
So, what is it really? What's the secret sauce that separates an amateur from a pro? Is it just pure luck? Some hidden trick nobody's telling you about? Nah, it's not that simple. The real difference, the thing that matters, is having a complete strategic framework, a blueprint for literally every move they make.
And that is exactly what we're going to unpack today. The professional's blueprint. See, this isn't about getting lucky once in a while. This is about a structured, repeatable path that takes you from just playing for fun to getting consistent, professional-grade results.
So let's get one thing straight right away. Poker mastery isn't about finding that one secret move. It's about building a complete system. A system where every single piece, from the most basic bet to the most advanced psychological trick, all work together in harmony. And that's our mission today. We're going to build that system one piece at a time. Okay, so here's the game plan, our roadmap for today. We're going to tackle this in 4 key stages. First, we build the foundation. Second, we learn how to use the weapons in our arsenal. Third, we stop just playing the cards and start playing the player. And finally, we get to the hardest part of all, mastering your own mind.
All right, let's jump right into stage 1, building your foundation. And the very first building block we're going to lay down, it's probably the single most powerful and profitable weapon any pro has in their toolkit.
It's called the continuation bet. You'll hear pros call it a C-bet. And the idea is super simple. If you were the one raising before the flop, you continue that aggression with another bet on the flop. It sounds basic, right? But this one simple move is an absolute cornerstone of winning poker. It's all about showing strength and just taking the pot down right there.
Now, I love this analogy because it just clicks. Think about it like you're in a courtroom. Your pre-flop raise, that's you making the accusation. The C-bet, that's your opening statement. You are grabbing control of the narrative, you're asserting dominance, and you're basically putting all the pressure on your opponent to prove you're bluffing. It doesn't even matter what cards you have in your hand at that moment.
But, and this is a big but, you can't just C-bet every single time. That's a recipe for disaster. Knowing when to pull the trigger is everything. So what are the perfect spots? Well, you're looking for boards that help your story, like a high card, dry board. Think A7-2. Those are cards that are way more likely to be in your range as the initial raiser. Or maybe a static board, like King 6-6, where there just aren't many draws your opponent could be chasing. Basically, you attack when the board gives you what we call a range advantage, where the hands you're likely to have are way stronger than the hands they're likely to have.
So how big should you bet in these spots? You might think you need to bet huge, but actually, no. On these perfect boards, a small bet is your best friend. We're talking just 25 to 33% of the pot. Think about that. You're risking a tiny amount to achieve your main goal, which is just to get them to fold all their nothing hands. It's the definition of maximum pressure for minimum risk. Okay, so once you've got that fundamental weapon down, it's time to level up. We're moving past just the mechanics of the cards now and into the really fun stuff, advanced psychological warfare. And this is where things get really interesting. We're going to take an action that looks totally passive on the surface, just calling a bet, and we're going to flip it on its head and turn it into a serious weapon.
This move is known as the float, and the whole point is you are not calling because you have a great hand. Nope, you're calling their C-bet with a very specific plan in mind. You're going to steal the pot from them on a later street. It's the ultimate counterpunch. It's how you punish those players who are C-betting way too often, the ones who are abusing the very weapon we just talked about. You're not just playing along, you're setting a trap.
But, figuring out how to exploit your opponent's mind is only half the battle. Because the single biggest weapon at the poker table, and also the single biggest weakness, it isn't the C-bet, it isn't the float, it's your own mind. I mean it. Mastering your emotions, that's what truly separates the great players from the merely good ones, because one emotional mistake can wipe out a whole session of perfect technical play.
And that brings us to the big one, tilt. Now, most people think tilt is just getting angry after a bad beat, but it's so much more complex than that. The pros recognize at least 5 different kinds. There's frustration tilt, sure, but there's also revenge tilt, where you're just trying to get back at one specific player. There's desperation tilt, when you start chasing your losses. There's even winner's tilt, where you get a huge stack and start playing way too loose. And yeah, there's even boredom tilt. The key, the absolute key, is figuring out which one is your personal trigger. because that's the only way you can stop it before it costs you a fortune.
All right, we're now entering the final stage. This is what I call the mental end game. This is where all the pieces of the puzzle, the technical skill, the psychological moves, all come together into the highest level of poker strategy.
And in this endgame, especially when you're deep in a tournament, you have to understand a crucial concept. A chip is not just a chip. Its value is always changing. I mean, think about it. 1,000 chips when you're the shortest stack of the table, that's your entire life. That same 1,000 chips when you're the massive chip leader, it's just a drop in the bucket. Getting your head around this changing value is the absolute key to surviving in tournaments.
And this quote just nails the core idea. This is the heart of what's called the independent chip model, or ICM. It's basically a fancy mathematical way of saying that survival is everything. Gaining chips is good, but losing chips hurts you more. Doubling up is great, but busting out is a total disaster. So what does that mean? It means your decisions, especially as you get close to the big money, have to be about surviving, not just blindly trying to get more chips.
So, you've got all these tools. You know how to c-bet, you know how to float. You've worked on your mental game, you understand ICM. Once you have all of that in your arsenal, it all comes down to one final ultimate strategic question that you have to ask yourself every single time you sit down to play.
And that question is this: what path are you going to take to win? Are you going to play game theory optimal, or GTO, which is this balanced, kind of robotic, mathematically perfect style that makes you impossible to exploit? Or are you going to play an exploitative style, where you're actively looking for your opponent's weaknesses and intentionally changing your strategy to punish their mistakes? You see, the truly great players, the elites, they know how to do both. They know when to be a balanced, unbluffable robot against other pros, and they know when to go for the throat against a weaker player who's making obvious mistakes.
And that really brings us to the final step. True mastery, at the end of the day, isn't about just copying someone else's system. It's about taking all of these ideas we've talked about, the technical stuff, the mind games, the big picture strategies, and blending them together to create your own personal player blueprint.
Because at the end of the day, the cards you get are only half the story. The technical skills, the math, the aggressive plays, that's one half of the battle, for sure. But the real question, the one you have to ask yourself, is this: are you ready to master the other half? The mental game, the psychological warfare, the strategic choices. That's what really separates the players from the champions.